Good morning. It is truly an honor for me to be here. To join you, my wife, to join Pennsylvanians, to join Americans from around this country, to spend a few moments of reflection here today. Over the past 10 years, we have heard this place compared to many other places. I know you family members have heard it repeatedly. I get a feeling when I go to some of those places, to Gettysburg, to the Alamo, and to here. I get a feeling of spirit, a feeling of presence. We look to the past for comparisons, trying to fully grasp what this hillside means, and nothing can really fit it. The truth is that this location, this place, is like no other, because the deeds aboard Flight 93 were like no other. There is nothing with which to compare the passenger uprising of 10 years ago. It has no companion in history in my mind. Passengers on Flight 93 charted a new course, set a new standard for American bravery. They did not choose to go into battle when they boarded that jetliner. They started their own battle when they realized that they were in the hands of men intent on striking yet another blow against the symbol of our nation. They preferred to shorten the final minutes of their own lives to defend their nation, to defend their fellow citizens. They halted that final attack on 9/11 using their own blood, but they put an end to the men who tried to steal our spirit. Their uprising marks the moment in history when Americans showed what makes us different. We refuse to be victims. We refuse to settle for the term survivor. Captivity will not suit us. We know that there are things more important than our own lives, and chief among them is freedom. That truth rose like the smoke over this field 10 years ago. Today our capital stands. The city of Washington is intact. The honor of our republic is yet stronger because of the strength of will and the sense of purpose of 40 American citizens who chose to be warriors, who chose to sacrifice themselves to protect their fellow Americans. They engaged in that battle armed only with the knowledge that they were right. And that knowledge is perhaps the most powerful shield a people can carry. Before she joined the others in rushing that cabin to stay that hand of tyranny, one of the passengers made a telephone call. Honor Elizabeth Wainio. She spoke with her stepmother. She said this: "It hurts me that it's going to be so much harder for you all than it is for me." Liz Wainio was only 27 years old. She was minutes from death. Yet she worried about the burdens of others. She was right. For the living, it is much harder. Our troops on the ground in combat with the forces are unreasonable. Family members deal with this every day. Daily, we debate the size and scope of this war. We argue over the course of our nation and how to preserve our civil liberties while fighting against those who would use them against us. Our tasks are hard. That we are free to go about them is testimony to the grace and decency of the 40 who died here. Nothing we build in stone and mortar can sufficiently honor the deeds of the men and women of Flight 93. Nothing we say, short of their names, can speak to the greatness of their spirit, of their innate understanding of the duties of a citizen of this great country. We can only go about the business of being Americans, of being strong and optimistic and vibrant people. The breezes on this hillside, whispers of an unfinished agenda, one of freedom at home and abroad, of faraway peoples freed from the yoke of dictators and bigots. It is filled with lives we must now complete on behalf of those who sacrificed their lives. They are now mileposts fixed along the road of our country's history. It is up to us to finish their journey. At the conclusion of the national anthem, you hear the words, "In home of the brave." Clearly, this site is the home of the brave. May they rest in peace.
When I found out yesterday that I was going to be making remarks today, I cursed Keith Newland. I was hopeful that he was just going to give me something to read so that I could plow through it without getting emotional. Wally did something smart. He has his sunglasses on so that it's hard to see his eyes. And truthfully, I do have to say something about Wally. Having worked for Congressman Murtha and have been a part of this project for many years, a lot of folks out there probably don't have any idea of who Wally Miller is, but I know the families of Flight 93 know who Wally Miller is. And I think they owe him a lot. You know, I've just about ruined my handkerchief, and I hope to get through this. When I was thinking about what I was going to say, I really, and if I'm disjointed, it's because my thoughts are so disjointed today. Yesterday, when I came in, I was just trying to get my bearings as to where things were. I remember being at the temporary memorial so often that I had a picture of what this site was. And I was actually standing up here on the hillside, and I was talking to someone from the National Park Service, and she said, well, remember, because I hadn't thought about the memorial for quite some time, or thought about the design, and she said, well, remember, this wall is the flight path. And 10 years of emotion just came rushing in as those names on that wall, those lives that were snuffed out in that brief moment, have meant so much to this country. I'm too young to have been around for Pearl Harbor. I'm too young to remember where I was when John Kennedy was assassinated. I will never forget that day, September 11, 2001. It was a beautiful day. We were talking about it earlier. The sky was cloudless. It was just one of those days where you went out in the morning and thought, boy, this is just a great day. Good things are going to happen today. As I'm sure everyone on those 4 planes thought. And I remember as we were hearing the news and just the horror of what took place. And you thought, I thought, why? What have we done as a country? What have we done as a people that would prompt such an outrageous act? And no matter how good of a country we think we have, no matter how generous of people we are, there will always be people out there that want to stop what we're doing. They want to stop the way we live. And that day brought it home. There had been terrorist activity in the past, but nothing quite so rough. And it made us realize, and it changed the world that day. My twins, Sadie and Joe, were 2 years old at the time. That morning I was in Patton, Pennsylvania, northern Cambria County, and actually had gone in the afternoon and sat with the mayor of Evansburg, Charlie Moyer, and we watched as the day had unfolded and how the analysis of what had happened. And we were sitting in his office in Evansburg, watching his 9-inch color TV, just trying to figure out what was going on. And I went home and gave my kids a hug and said, our world just changed. Our lives have just changed. And we have to be ready for it. And now, 10 years later, you look back and you say, well, what has all this meant? And I think back to what the people on Flight 93 must have been thinking. We'd all grown up, many of us have grown up saying, if your plane is ever hijacked, just sit down and be quiet. It'll work out. They just want money. They just want something. And the realization that these folks had when they realized that this plane had no good intention, that there was no tomorrow. And they stood up, ordinary civilians, citizens just like us. And they took action. And it just amazes me. President Clinton mentioned yesterday some activity in years past, but it was always a military action. Not civilians, not citizens who said, we have to do something. And they planned it, and they had a strategy. And they attacked. And they forced that plane to crash here. And it's just amazing, as I continue to think about this wall, this flight path in, what was going through all those people's minds? Did they know the scope, the magnitude of what they were doing? I'm sure they had some idea. They couldn't have known what it would mean to all of us. So, looking at the families, the courage that your family members show will inspire generations to come. The courage that you have shown to make sure that we continue on this march to build this memorial to them, to never forget what happened on that day 10 years ago, is a testament to who they were, to who you are, and to who we are. So I applaud you, I thank you for your courage in showing us the way. You know, as we were sitting here yesterday, and Vice President Biden was speaking, and I don't know how many of you noticed it, but a little butterfly came up and landed on these flowers up here. And then it sort of fluttered off. And I watched it and I looked up and I saw President and Mrs. Bush watching it as it went away too. And I thought to myself, that's exactly where we are. It's just a field. It was always a field. Until September 11th, 2001, when it became a field of water. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I just want to say publicly, Mark, that was outstanding. It was very well done. I appreciate your words. Well, it's an honor for me to be here again, to be back in Shanksville, to be back with the families. I just want to say a word about yesterday. Mark talked a bit about it, but I thought it was just an absolutely wonderful, moving, fitting ceremony to dedicate this memorial to the heroes of Flight 93. The speeches were powerful. President Clinton, President Bush, and President Biden, I think, really hit the mark in their speeches yesterday, and I think all Americans can be proud of what we've been able to accomplish here in Shanksville. I also listened to the songs yesterday performed by Sarah McLachlan, and you would have thought the two songs she sang, I Will Remember You and Angel, were so fitting that she would have wrote them for the memorial yesterday. Again, just across the board, very, very moving and fitting to open this memorial. And this memorial would not be here for not the hundreds, if not thousands of people that have worked on this, from the local officials, the volunteers here in Somerset County who poured out their hearts, who worked extremely hard to make sure that this memorial became a reality. To the state officials that were involved, particularly Governor Rendell, who was a real champion, who sat here about 5 years ago with me. And he had just funded, I don't know what the project was, in Philadelphia or somewhere, and he looked at me and said, we should be spending that money here. And he went back to Harrisburg and started on the mission to make sure that the state was going to do their part to see this memorial was dedicated and built. To Governor Ridge and General Franks and Chris Sullivan, who headed up and are heading up the drive to raise the funds to complete the dedication here, and to the thousands of people who have contributed. Governor Ridge, thank you for your efforts in doing that. And of course, the men and women of the National Park Services, especially Joanne Hanley, who's sitting here today, your efforts. And Keith Newland, who continues that effort. We appreciate all that you're doing, and we know that you'll continue to do the things, you and the men and women, to make sure that this site, and every year has the ceremony like this to honor the heroes of Flight 93. And of course, to the families. You inspire me every day. I've worked with many of you. We've faced hurdles, we've overcome them to see that the memorial's here. But you truly are an inspiration to me in everything that I do. Whether it's protecting this nation, whether it's trying to build a better America, whether it's trying to bring people together, you're the inspiration, you're the courage and the strength that helps me do what I do in the United States Congress, and I thank you for that. September 11th was a defining moment for America, but it was also a defining moment for a freshman congressman. That was me, Bill Schuster. In the Capitol complex that day, I'll never forget that day. I got into my office about 8:30, turned the TV on, and soon after saw the reports of the first plane. I called home, talked to my wife, Becky, and we talked about what she thought, what I thought it was, and had to be a small aircraft. Hung the phone up, and soon after we saw the second plane go in. Then, of course, the Pentagon, and we were ordered to evacuate the government buildings. I sent my staff away, and a couple of us stayed behind, thinking it would be mayhem out there in the streets, so we'd wait until it died down. And then we watched a plane on the north side of the Capitol do a U-turn. It was a commercial plane, it was ordered to land. But after we saw that, we decided it was best to evacuate the Capitol. And then, of course, hearing the plane was missing in Shanksville, and then it went down here. The horrific events and the heroism that followed should always be remembered. Whether it's the towers, where almost 400 firemen and policemen rushed into those buildings to save lives and gave their lives at the end. Or to the Pentagon, where first responders and men and women who worked in the Pentagon went back into the building and tried to save people in the Pentagon. Tremendous acts of heroism. But this is the place where Americans said no. They weren't going to stand for what was happening. They heard about it, and as horrific as the day was, and to bring back those thoughts, it does bring a smile to my face to know they took a vote. Only in America would people take a vote, decide to make a plan, and then act on it. You know, this is the greatest country in the world. So they fought the first counteroffensive, the first counterattack in the skies over Pennsylvania. And it ended right here in Shanksville. They should always, and always will be, I believe, to the American people, an inspiration with their courage and the hope that they give us. This is the site that I believe future generations will turn to. We heard yesterday and 10 years ago, it evoked memories for me about Lexington and Concord and the Alamo, and where Americans banded together against incredible odds, stood strong, and said, no, this will not stand. That's what happened in the skies of Pennsylvania. That's what happened in Shanksville, and I'm certain it will be the inspiration for many, many generations to come. We must always remember the heroes of Flight 93. God bless them, God bless the families, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.